Let's break down strength, block 7. This month, we got an absolute doozy. We have 5 reps with a 4-0-4-0 tempo. You probably haven't seen that second 4 in many tempo schemes that we do because it's a concentric. We usually like to do it explosive or as we denote as 1 second. Reason behind that is because it's the weakest contraction type. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. But if we're looking at this 5 reps with a 4-0-4-0 tempo, essentially means it's about 40 seconds of time under tension per set. And what that usually gets us is things like building of muscle and burning fat. So it's a really important thing to think about as to why we might just choose a certain set and rep scheme with a tempo, because it gets us a little bit more of a desired effect depending on what our goals are. So now as we're starting to break this down, what is this 4-0-4-0 going to get us, relatively speaking, doing like an 8-0 exo tempo or a 5-2-1 exo tempo, that kind of concept. We really want to think about what that 4-second concentric is going to get us, relatively speaking, than just allocating our time either eccentrically or isometrically. So biggest thing is concentric is weakest. When I look at the concentric contraction, that is the rate limiting step for every single exercise. And why that's important to know is because we're governed by how much weight we can use, not from eccentric strength or isometric strength, but by what we can do concentrically. Because eventually I'm going to have to overcome with it. So if I can't lift the weight, I can't finish the rep, therefore concentric would be the limiting step. Now, if we're going to allocate more time to concentric, essentially we're saying we want that rate limiting step to be more amplified. And what I can get from that is a little bit more metabolic stress. So if I'm only going now to whatever it is my concentric limit is, I push it harder and harder and harder, I start to accumulate more stress. And this is what stimulates that pathway to either burning fat or building muscle. Remember, the tempo is what it is until it actually has something that has value to us. So if I'm going to do a 4-second concentric, which is the weakest of the 3 contraction types, still doing some time under tension in the eccentric, now I have the more amplified effect from that concentric contraction to hopefully get more what I want in terms of building fat or building muscle and losing fat. Now on the other end, there's a motor control aspect where a lot of folks are going to be inherently stronger eccentrically and isometric. Now this weaker contraction type is going to choose a more appropriate weight because we're going to burn out faster, as well as we have to fight through what we call the sticking point. So we've all kind of felt it when we get to this range that it's, okay, I can't really push through. What this is your body trying to align itself during this mechanically weak position to overcome whatever it is, a lack of contractile tissue is, or your leverage, or just the momentum of the movement. When we take away momentum, we focus more on building up the actual contractile units, as well as controlling your breath during this range going up and down. Usually it's the breath or lack of control of that breath is when we're trying to overcome a movement that we lose that movement right there, right? So if I can't control my breath in this, what we call Valsalva or inhale dominant position, and then as I start to descend down, which I'm stronger already, and then I breathe out too early, chances are that pressure I build into that diaphragm and that thorax area will dissipate, and then now I'm more required on whatever tension or ability I have with my actual muscles I'm trying to work, whether it's my lower body or my upper body. And that mechanically weak position we become limited by. So again, another thing of like really amplifying the effect of 1, this weaker contraction type, but 2, this area where it's really hard to manage as I'm starting to push through whatever sticking point or mechanically weak position I may be in. And it's going to really focus on developing this breath control during the repetition. And that's going to lead into these motor learning pathways, aka understanding how to do the movement and how to control it and how to really optimize that movement for later down the road when we take away that concentric time under tension and we focus on heavier resistance. So block 7, 5 reps with a 4-0-4-0 tempo. It is going to be an absolute amazing training block. Make sure that we're doing all of our habits between sleep, hydration, vegetables, and then being mindful of what we're eating. Make sure that you're being conscientious of every 48 hours, get that workout in so we get this cadence and this rhythm. I know we got a lot of stuff coming up here in the summer between vacations and camps, etc., but commit to getting those 3 days a week, every 48 hours. And if we can, tie in one of those stretch, conditioning, or hypertrophy classes to help complement this whole entire experience.